The first time they came, it wasn't an invasion. It wasn't a war. It was worse. The alien visitors were far beyond us, thousands of years ahead in technology, intelligence, and power. When their massive ships darkened the skies, we thought it was the beginning of something extraordinary, a new era, a future where humanity would finally join the stars. But they didn't come as equals. They didn't come as conquerors either. No, they came with something worse. Pity. They called themselves our benefactors, speaking in calm, condescending tones about how humanity was still young, still fragile. And so they gifted us with their scraps. Outdated reactors, primitive ship parts, old weaponry, things they had long abandoned. It was their way of keeping us beneath them, ensuring that we never posed a threat. The leaders of Earth accepted, desperate to grasp even the smallest piece of alien technology. They called it a new age of prosperity, a golden age of advancement. But to those who saw beyond the smiles and diplomatic handshakes, it was clear. This was no gift. This was a leash. The world changed, but not the way we had hoped. Factories adapted, scientists studied the wreckage, and governments squabbled over who deserved what. The aliens watched with bemused indifference, believing we would do nothing more than struggle among ourselves. They were wrong, because buried beneath their arrogance, beneath their belief that humanity was nothing more than a race of children playing with discarded toys, they had made a mistake. They had underestimated us. It started in secret. A handful of engineers, soldiers, and visionaries came together, not under the banners of nations, not for profit or power, but for one purpose: to prove that humanity was not a race of beggars, but of builders. Piece by piece, they took the scraps, the so-called useless tech, and they began constructing something new, something no one had seen before. A warship, unlike anything Earth had ever dreamed of. They called it Iron Requiem. And when the aliens finally noticed what we had done, it was too late. The first shot that rewrote history wasn't fired in anger. It was fired in defiance. The day Iron Requiem powered up, the universe changed. It wasn't sleek. It wasn't elegant like the ships of our so-called benefactors. It was rough, patched together with scavenged alien alloys and human ingenuity. A monster of steel and fire. The engine cores burned hotter than anything Earth had ever produced. Its weapons were jury-rigged from discarded energy cannons, and its hull was reinforced with plates torn from old war machines. And yet, despite all its imperfections, it was ours. The people behind it had no illusions. They knew what this meant. The moment the aliens realized what we had done, they would not be amused. This wasn't some petty rebellion. This wasn't about defying authority. This was proof, undeniable proof, that humanity wasn't some helpless child in the cosmic scheme of things. We had taken their trash and built a monster. It started with an anomaly. The alien observers, floating in their pristine, untouchable stations above Earth, detected a surge of energy deep in the asteroid belt. Unfamiliar readings, an unusual power signature. At first, they dismissed it as human incompetence. Maybe an experiment gone wrong, another failed attempt to reverse engineer their gifts. But then, Iron Requiem moved. The first test run was simple, nothing more than a drift through the debris field, its engines burning against the void. It should have been impossible. Humans weren't supposed to have ships of this scale, let alone one capable of war. Yet there it was, carving a path through space like a steel leviathan, something born not from privilege, but from sheer, brutal determination. The aliens noticed. A single scout ship, small and sleek, was dispatched to investigate. Its pilot approached cautiously, scanning the structure before it. The readings didn't make sense. This ship was nothing like theirs, an amalgamation of crude technology and mismatched components. But deep inside the scout's calculations, behind all the arrogance, was something else. Fear. The humans weren't meant to be capable of this. Not yet. Not for centuries. The scout opened a channel. The message came in their usual diplomatic, measured tone. Humans, this is a violation of the technological regulations. You are in possession of unauthorized constructs. Power down your vessel and prepare for inspection. No response. The pilot repeated the command, this time with a sharper edge. Human vessel, acknowledge. You are in breach of... The ship's cannons roared. A single shot. A blazing spear of energy, burning through the void, slamming into the scout's hull. The impact shattered its shields in an instant, sending it spiraling away, alarms screaming in protest. Humanity had just fired its first shot against the so-called benefactors. The universe would never be the same. The moment that first shot landed, the entire game changed. The scout ship, small and fragile in comparison to the beast we had built, spun wildly as sparks and fire erupted from its damaged hull. It had never expected to be attacked, not by humans. We were supposed to obey. We were supposed to grovel and thank them for their scraps. But today, the rules were rewritten. Inside Iron Requiem, the bridge was deathly silent, save for the hum of its massive engines. Every eye was locked onto the external monitors, watching as the alien scout struggled to regain control. Then, the transmission came through again, but this time there was no arrogance, no condescension, only stunned disbelief. Human vessel, cease fire. This is an act of aggression. Surrender immediately. And Captain Grant, the man who had given everything to see this ship come to life, leaned forward. His voice was calm, steady. No. A pause, a long, tense moment where the entire crew held their breath. Then the alien's voice returned, but there was something new in it, something we had never heard from them before. Panic. You don't understand what you've done. If you resist, there will be consequences. We have protected your species from destruction. Do not throw that away. Grant's expression didn't change. He simply nodded toward the weapons officer. Fire again. This time it wasn't just a warning shot. The plasma cannons roared to life, sending a volley of energy into the crippled scout. Its shields flickered, overloaded, then died completely. The ship cracked, split apart by fire and force, and in an instant it was gone. Nothing but floating debris in the cold vacuum of space. Silence filled the bridge once more. No cheers, no celebrations. Everyone understood what had just happened. We hadn't just fired the first shot. We had drawn a line in the sand. Somewhere, high above Earth, the alien overlords were watching. The moment that Scout's signal cut out, alarms must have blared in their pristine halls. Officers would be rushing to stations, trying to comprehend the impossible. The humans had built a warship. The humans had defied them, and the humans had won. The question now was simple. What would they do about it? The answer came faster than expected. Within an hour, long-range sensors picked up movement. Dozens of signals closing in fast. Not scouts this time, warships, real ones. The benefactors had decided to respond. They were coming. The fleet arrived faster than expected. Within hours of Iron Requiem's first kill, the alien warships surged into the system, dropping out of FTL in tight, disciplined formations. They weren't here to negotiate. They were here to remind us of our place. On the bridge of Iron Requiem, every screen lit up with flashing warnings. Sensors screamed as ship after ship materialized, surrounding our position like a steel net. They brought a damn armada, muttered Lieutenant Harris, eyes darting across the threat display. Captain Grant didn't flinch. They think we're going to surrender. His voice was steady, cold. They're about to learn the truth. The alien command ship broadcast its message, its voice deep and resonant, filled with the weight of absolute authority. Human vessel, you have committed an act of war. Power down immediately, surrender your technology, and submit to our judgment. Resistance will result in annihilation." A tense silence followed. The crew exchanged glances. The message was clear. They weren't just here to destroy Iron Requiem. They were here to crush humanity's spirit. Grant's lips curled into the faintest smirk. He pressed a button on his console, opening a system-wide transmission. Every human colony, every outpost, every satellite tuned in as his voice echoed across the void. "This is Captain Grant of the warship Iron Requiem. For too long we have been told we are weak, that we are unworthy, that our destiny is to kneel." He exhaled slowly. "Today, we say no." A beat of silence. Then he turned to the weapons officer. "Fire." The ship's railguns ignited, hurling kinetic slugs at near-light speeds. They tore through space like meteors, slamming into the lead alien cruiser with unimaginable force. Shields collapsed instantly. A second later, its hull ruptured, spilling fire and debris into the void. The alien fleet hesitated. Just for a moment. And that was all we needed. Engines roared to full power as Iron Requiem surged forward, guns blazing. We weaved through the chaos, dodging plasma blasts and missile swarms, every shot we fired striking with deadly precision. The aliens had come expecting an easy victory. They thought they'd be putting down a disobedient child. Instead, they found something else. They found humanity at war, and we were just getting started. The battle exploded across the void. Plasma beams slashed through the darkness. Railgun slugs ripped into hulls, and missiles screamed through the battlefield, leaving trails of fire and death. Iron Requiem moved like a beast unleashed, darting through the chaos with surprising speed for something so massive. But the aliens had numbers. Too many. For every ship we crippled, more closed in. They fired in coordinated bursts, trying to box us in, trying to overwhelm us. On the bridge, red warning lights flashed as shields buckled under the relentless assault. Sparks flew from overloaded consoles, and the ship trembled from the impact of an enemy torpedo that had nearly breached the hull. "Shields at 30%!" shouted Harris, gripping the edge of his station. "We can't take this forever," another officer yelled. Grant didn't hesitate. "We don't need forever. We just need 5 more minutes." Because while the alien fleet was focused on Iron Requiem, they didn't realize something else had been set into motion. Down on Earth, inside hidden military bunkers, operators were standing by, waiting for the signal. Dozens of planetary defense cannons, once deemed obsolete under alien protection, had been secretly refitted with the very technology they had tried to suppress. And now, they were locked onto the sky. Grant tapped a control on his chair, sending a single coded pulse to Earth. A confirmation. Then he smirked. "Now." Across the planet's surface, the cannons roared to life. Beams of energy and hypersonic projectiles launched into the heavens, ripping into the enemy fleet from below. The aliens never saw it coming. One of their warships, untouched until now, was the first to go, struck directly in its reactor core. It detonated in a violent chain reaction, taking 2 others with it. The battlefield turned into chaos. The aliens scrambled, their formations breaking apart. They had thought this was a simple suppression mission. They had thought Iron Requiem was the only threat. They had thought wrong. And in that confusion, in that moment of hesitation, we struck back. "Full power to forward rail guns," Grant barked. The warship surged ahead, its cannons hammering into the disoriented enemy ships. One after another they fell, crippled, burning, retreating. A species that had once pitied us was now running from us. And for the first time in history, humanity wasn't just surviving. We were winning. The tide of battle had turned. What started as a hopeless standoff had become something no one, especially not our so-called benefactors, had predicted. Humanity was fighting back, and we were winning. The alien fleet, once an impenetrable wall of discipline and firepower, was in disarray. Their ships, designed for calculated, overwhelming force, weren't built for chaos. They weren't used to losing. And that's exactly what was happening. On Iron Requiem's bridge, Captain Grant watched the battle unfold with steely determination. The planetary defense cannons were still firing, picking off enemy ships from below, while his own warship tore through their formations like a wolf among sheep. Enemy fleet down to 47% strength, Lieutenant Harris reported, his voice filled with something approaching disbelief. They're retreating from high orbit. They're trying to regroup. Grant leaned forward. We're not letting them. He opened a direct channel to Earth's Defense Command. Bring the hammer down. Across the surface, the hidden bunkers that had remained dormant for decades came to life once more. But this time, it wasn't just defensive cannons. This time, humanity was sending a message. Dozens of experimental missile silos, long considered useless under alien rule, were activated simultaneously. These weren't ordinary warheads. They had been quietly upgraded with salvaged alien tech, repurposed energy cores, and human ingenuity. And now, they were all locked onto the enemy fleet. In the span of 5 seconds, Earth launched its wrath into the sky. Hundreds of missiles streaked through the void, weaving past wreckage and debris, hunting their targets with terrifying precision. The alien fleet scrambled to react, but it was too late. The first wave struck home, ripping through shield after shield, breaching hulls, detonating inside command centers. Fire and metal bloomed in the vacuum of space as their once mighty warships were torn apart. On board Iron Requiem, the crew watched in stunned silence as the largest of the alien ships, their command vessel, was struck by 3 missiles in rapid succession. Its shields flickered, then failed entirely. A final warhead slammed into its reactor core. For a split second, there was nothing but eerie stillness. Then, the ship imploded, folding in on itself before a blinding explosion consumed it from the inside out. A shockwave rippled through space, scattering debris in all directions. And just like that, their leadership was gone. The remaining alien ships panicked. Some tried to fight, but their weapons were firing wildly, their formations shattered. Others turned and fled, burning hard to escape Earth's gravity well, their once arrogant presence reduced to a desperate retreat. The bridge of Iron Requiem erupted into cheers, but Grant didn't celebrate. Not yet. His eyes were locked on the retreating ships. They wouldn't take this humiliation lightly. This was only the beginning. The remnants of the alien fleet scattered, their once mighty warships limping away like wounded animals. Where they had once hovered above Earth as untouchable overlords, now they fled, their arrogance shattered, their authority burned away in fire and debris. But Captain Grant wasn't smiling. He sat in his command chair, watching the tactical display as the last of their ships vanished into the void. The battle was won, but the war? That was just beginning. They'll be back, Lieutenant Harris muttered, as if reading his mind. And next time they won't underestimate us. Grant exhaled. No, they won't. Across Earth, the world was still processing what had just happened. Every colony, every station, every hidden outpost had watched Iron Requiem and its crew do the impossible. We hadn't just survived an alien assault. We had defeated them. But there was no time to celebrate. Because now, humanity had a choice. Sir, incoming message from the Unified Earth Council, the COAM's officer called. They want a full report and a strategy for what happens next. Grant's jaw tightened. He knew what the politicians would want. A defensive plan. A way to reinforce Earth's position and avoid total retaliation. But that wasn't enough. The aliens had never planned to share the stars with us. They had never seen us as equals. We had been nothing more than an inconvenience, a species to be kept contained, controlled, leashed. Until now. He stood, looking around at his crew, men and women who had risked everything to prove humanity's worth. They were tired, bruised, but their eyes burned with something he hadn't seen in a long time. Determination. No more waiting, no more hiding. It was time to take the fight to them. Grant turned to the comms officer. "Send this message to the council." He took a breath, then spoke the words that would change history. "Earth stands victorious, but victory isn't enough. We have the means, we have the will, and now we have proof that they can bleed. We do not wait for their return. We strike first. Prepare the fleet. Humanity goes to war." The message sent shockwaves through the world. For centuries, humanity had looked to the stars with wonder. We had dreamed of joining some great galactic civilization, of proving ourselves worthy of the cosmos. But the truth was far uglier. The aliens had never seen us as equals. They had come not to uplift us, but to keep us weak, to trap us in the illusion of progress while ensuring we never became a threat. They had ruled us with condescending smiles, enforcing peace by keeping the leash tight around our throats. But now, the leash had been broken, and the masters of the galaxy had no idea what they had unleashed. The unified Earth Council was in chaos. The battle had been broadcast to every major city, every colony, every hidden outpost that had long suspected the truth. The warship Iron Requiem was no longer just a military asset. It had become a symbol. Half the council wanted to negotiate. They feared retaliation, feared that the full force of the alien empire would crush us before we could even build another warship. But the other half? The other half saw what Grant and his crew had proven. The aliens could be beaten. And if we waited for them to come back, it would be on their terms. "We cannot afford to sit back," Grant's voice rang out in the war room, where Earth's most powerful leaders had gathered. "They'll return, and next time, they won't play games. If we wait, we die. But if we strike first, if we take the fight to them, we have a chance." "Against an interstellar empire?" one of the diplomats scoffed. "That's suicide." Grant didn't blink. "No, it's war, and war is what humanity does best." The room fell silent, because deep down they all knew the truth. From the moment the aliens arrived, we had been living on borrowed time. The only reason they hadn't wiped us out was because they hadn't needed to. But they needed to now. "How?" someone finally asked. "Even if we wanted to fight, how do we go on the offensive? We have one warship." Grant smirked. "We had one warship before the battle. Now we have an entire planet ready to fight." And that was the difference. Humanity had always been at its best with its back against the wall. The moment we realized we had nothing left to lose, we became something the galaxy had never seen before, something terrifying. Survivors, warriors, predators, and now we had a target. Deep in the outer system, hidden away from prying eyes, a facility came to life. It had been built in secret, a place where human engineers had worked tirelessly to reverse engineer every scrap of alien tech they could get their hands on. Until now, their work had been slow, careful, limited by the fear of discovery. But now they had Iron Requiem. They had wreckage from the battle. They had proof that humanity could do the impossible. And within days, they were building something new, something bigger, something designed for war. 2 weeks after the battle, when the first alien reinforcements arrived, expecting to find a crippled planet and a terrified species, they found something else instead. They found another warship, then another, and another. The first fleet had been built from scraps. The next would be built for vengeance. For the first time in history, Earth wasn't just defending itself. We were coming for them. And the galaxy would never be the same again. The first wave of alien reinforcements entered the system cautiously. Their battle records from the previous encounter told them what they should expect. A single rogue warship, a defiant but ultimately doomed species, a planet still licking its wounds. But what they found was something else entirely. Earth wasn't broken. It wasn't cowering. It was arming itself for war. From the bridge of Iron Requiem, Captain Grant watched as the alien fleet took position just beyond the asteroid belt. Their ships hovered in tight formation, their weapons primed but their movements hesitant. They had learned their lesson. This wasn't going to be a simple suppression mission. A message came through, crisp and cold. Human forces, you have violated interstellar law. Cease all hostilities and submit. This is your final warning. Grant smirked. Final warning? They were still pretending they had control of the situation. He gestured to his comms officer. Broadcast on all channels. A second later, his voice carried through the void, reaching not only the alien fleet, but every human listening from Earth, its colonies, and its secret bases across the system. This is Captain Grant of Iron Requiem. Earth does not recognize your authority. Your rule over us is over. If you want this system, come and take it. The challenge was set. A tense silence followed. Then the aliens fired. Missiles, plasma beams, and kinetic slugs streaked toward Iron Requiem. But this time, she wasn't alone. From behind Earth's moon, 3 newly completed warships emerged, engines flaring. They were smaller than Iron Requiem, less advanced, but they were fast, armed to the teeth and human-built. They cut through the void like wolves descending upon prey. The battle erupted in an instant. The new warships flanked Iron Requiem, unleashing hell upon the alien forces. Their weapons weren't elegant like the enemies. They were brutal, raw, designed with one purpose: to kill. Railgun slugs smashed through shields, missile barrages scattered enemy formations, and experimental energy cannons, born from stolen alien tech, carved through the darkness. The aliens faltered. For centuries, they had controlled humanity with a single lie: that we could never reach their level, that they were beyond us. And now, for the second time, we had proven them wrong. One of their battleships detonated as a human warship drove straight through its weakened hull, guns firing at point-blank range. Another enemy cruiser, damaged and panicked, tried to retreat, only to be hunted down and ripped apart by our own forces. The tide of war had shifted. And this time, it wasn't just one rogue warship standing against them. It was an entire species. Humanity wasn't fighting for survival anymore. We were fighting for dominion. In the alien high command, light years away, the news arrived. A war council convened, their long, sleek forms gathered around a massive holographic display. They stared at the images coming in. Humans, once considered primitive, now standing victorious over 2 of their fleets. One of them finally spoke, their voice slow and filled with disbelief. They weren't supposed to be capable of this. Another, higher-ranked, exhaled. We've made a mistake. A long silence followed. Then, their supreme commander rose from his seat, his expression unreadable. No. His voice was steel. We made them a mistake, and now we will correct it. Across the stars, a full invasion fleet, one large enough to shatter entire civilizations, was mobilized. Humanity had won 2 battles, but now the real war was about to begin. The full invasion fleet arrived 3 weeks later. It did not come with threats. It did not come with warnings. It came with fire. Massive alien dreadnoughts, each the size of cities, emerged from hyperspace, blotting out the stars. Cruisers, battleships, and fighter swarms filled the void, moving with cold precision. The benefactors had finally abandoned their arrogance. This was no longer a punitive strike. This was extermination. On board Iron Requiem, Captain Grant stared at the incoming fleet. His crew had fought impossible battles before, but this was different. The aliens had brought everything this time. "How many ships?" Grant asked, his voice steady. Harris swallowed hard. "Over 200. Maybe more." The war room was silent. Earth's fleet had grown in the past weeks. They had built more warships, upgraded old defense platforms, and rallied every hidden outpost capable of fighting. But even with all that, they were still outnumbered 10-1. For a moment, the weight of it settled over them. The undeniable reality that humanity, despite its defiance, despite its victories, was still a young race standing against an empire that had ruled the stars for millennia. For the first time, someone whispered what they had all been thinking. "We can't win this." A long silence followed. Then Grant spoke. "Then we won't fight to win." Eyes turned toward him. "We fight to change the game." The moment the alien fleet entered high orbit, Earth's defenses opened fire. From the ground, hundreds of missile silos, railgun batteries, and energy cannons unleashed hell. From the void, human warships surged forward, moving in tight formations, targeting enemy weak points with brutal efficiency. The first wave was devastating. Alien ships exploded in fiery blooms, their shields overwhelmed by concentrated fire. Battleships collapsed under relentless missile barrages. Entire enemy squadrons were wiped out before they could even return fire. But then, the main fleet retaliated. And the real slaughter began. The dreadnoughts tore through human lines with terrifying force. Their weapons carved massive holes in Earth's defenses, shattering ships in single blasts. Entire battalions of fighters were erased in the blink of an eye. Earth's warships, for all their newfound strength, were still fragile compared to the might of an ancient empire. One by one, they fell. The Valkyrie went first, caught in the crossfire of 3 enemy cruisers. Its reactors detonated, taking an entire section of the battlefield with it. Then the Argos, overwhelmed by enemy fighters, its hull ripped apart before it could even send a distress call. Iron Requiem fought like a demon, weaving through the chaos, its guns firing non-stop. But even the legendary warship couldn't hold forever. "Shields failing!" someone shouted. "Left thrusters down!" Grant's hands tightened into fists. They were running out of time. Then an alert flashed across the holo display. A private signal. One word. "Ready." Grant inhaled. It was time. He opened the fleet-wide channel. "All ships disengage. Fall back to Phase 2 positions." Some hesitated. Others questioned, but they obeyed. And the aliens, believing humanity was finally breaking, pushed forward, eager to land the killing blow, right into the trap. Deep in the asteroid belt, hidden among the debris, something stirred. For weeks, Earth's engineers had worked in secret, repurposing stolen alien technology. They had salvaged cores, rebuilt reactors, modified human weapons into something more. The project had one goal: to build a weapon not just for defense, but for eradication. And now, it was ready. The moment the alien fleet moved into range, Earth's secret fleet, hidden warships equipped with experimental warp drives, activated their systems. In an instant, a dozen warships appeared behind enemy lines, not human ships, doomsday ships. Each one carried a stolen alien singularity core, modified into a weapon of mass destruction. Each one was aimed directly at the dreadnoughts. And then, without hesitation, they detonated. The universe itself seemed to crack. 12 artificial black holes ripped through the alien fleet. Dreadnoughts, invincible and unstoppable, were crushed in an instant. Their shields, their armor, None of it mattered against the force of a collapsing singularity. Entire enemy squadrons were sucked into oblivion. Battleships were twisted and shredded before they could even process what was happening. The invincible fleet, meant to end humanity, was gone. In seconds, the battlefield turned from a massacre to something else entirely. A victory, not just for Earth, for humanity's place in the stars. In the alien high command, silence reigned. The Supreme Leader watched the disaster unfold, his long fingers clenched into fists. The mighty armada, his people's greatest force, was gone, destroyed by humans. We underestimated them. A pause. Then the Supreme Leader turned, his eyes cold. No, we miscalculated. And now the mistake will be corrected. Across the galaxy, new orders were sent. The war wasn't over. It was only just beginning. The victory was absolute. The alien fleet, once the galaxy's unchallenged enforcers, was shattered, its remains drifting lifelessly in the void. Earth stood bloodied but unbroken, a defiant ember in the dark. But the war was far from over, because now the galaxy was watching. In the days following the battle, Earth's sensors picked up a surge of interstellar activity. Dozens of alien species, once silent under the rule of the so-called benefactors, were now stirring. Some sent encrypted transmissions, their messages wary but intrigued. Others mobilized fleets of their own, either to observe or prepare for what they feared would come next. Because for the first time in history, a species had not only defied the Empire, it had defeated them. On the bridge of Iron Requiem, Captain Grant stared at the holodisplays, watching as intelligence reports flooded in. The Council had gathered in a secure war room back on Earth, and every surviving fleet commander was present. The discussion was heated. "We've won 2 battles, but we can't win a war against an entire empire," one of the senior diplomats argued. "They'll come back in numbers we can't even comprehend." "We don't have a choice," Harris shot back. "If we sit and wait, they'll wipe us out the moment they rebuild." Grant remained silent, listening. The truth was, both sides were right. Earth had just pulled off the impossible. But they were still one planet against a vast empire. They couldn't just defend. They had to change the rules of the war. Finally, Grant spoke. His voice was calm, steady. "We don't need to fight them alone." Eyes turned toward him. "We're not the only ones under their thumb. Every species they've conquered, every world they've strangled under their so-called guidance, they're all watching us right now. And for the first time, they're seeing something new." A pause. Hope. A heavy silence followed. Grant leaned forward. "We don't just fight for Earth anymore. We fight to break their empire entirely. A new war, not just for survival, for revolution, for dominion. Across the galaxy, whispers turned into action. Hidden resistance movements, once too afraid to rise, sent messages to Earth. Rebellions that had been crushed generations ago stirred once more. Some still hesitated, fearful, uncertain if humanity could truly lead the charge. So Earth sent them a message. A single video, broadcast across every secret channel, showing the remains of the alien fleet, the once invincible warships reduced to scrap, their mighty dreadnoughts torn apart by human hands. And with it, a simple declaration. We are no longer the hunted. We are no longer beneath them. Humanity stands. Join us. On the alien homeworld, the Supreme Leader stood before his war council, his gaze sweeping over his commanders. Their faces were grim. Even the most arrogant among them could no longer deny the truth. The humans weren't an anomaly. They were a problem, a contagion, a spark that threatened to set the entire empire ablaze. The Supreme Leader exhaled slowly, then spoke with finality. "Then we burn them first." Orders were given. Across the empire, fleets mobilized, factories roared to life, producing warships faster than ever before. New weapons, ones never before seen, were being developed with a singular purpose: the eradication of humanity. Because if they let Earth stand, if they let humans continue to rise, then it wasn't just the Empire that would fall. It was their entire rule over the galaxy, and that was something they could never allow. Back on Earth, as the first fleets of allied species arrived, hesitant, wary, but willing, Grant stood on the bridge of Iron Requiem, staring into the void. The real war was coming, and humanity was ready. The war came faster than anyone expected. Within weeks, the alien empire unleashed its full might, sending armadas the size of moons to crush Earth before its rebellion could spread. The skies above our planet burned with battle, and for a moment, it seemed like the Empire's will would finally bring humanity to its knees. But we had already changed the game. What had begun as a desperate struggle for survival had become something more: a war of revolution. Humanity was no longer alone. Across the galaxy, species that had lived under the Empire's rule for centuries rose up. Civilizations that had once been cowed into submission now saw what was possible. They saw Earth fight. They saw Iron Requiem carve legends into the void. And they saw something the Empire had spent millennia ensuring no species would ever believe: the gods of the galaxy could bleed. Rebellions exploded across 100 worlds. Supply lines crumbled. Entire fleets defected. The Empire, once an unshakable force, found itself facing the one thing it had always feared: an enemy that didn't just resist, but refused to lose. And in the final battle, as the Empire's homeworld itself burned, it became clear. This wasn't just Earth's war anymore. It was humanity's ascension. When the dust settled, the Empire was gone. Its leaders either dead or in hiding, its fleets scattered, its legacy reduced to whispers in the dark. And standing at the heart of it all, among the wreckage of a fallen dynasty, was Earth. A species that had once been given scraps, a species that had been told it would never amount to anything, a species that had taken its first steps into the stars, not as servants, not as victims, but as conquerors. Humanity had rewritten history, and the galaxy would never forget it. The day the sky cracked open, we didn't know what hit us. It was a Tuesday, mid-morning, and the air smelled like burnt ozone, like a storm was brewing, except there wasn't a cloud in sight. I was hauling cargo crates with Jessa and Malik down at the colony's edge, a dusty little outpost we'd scratched out of Titan's crust. 12 of us were out there, sweating through our suits, laughing about some dumb joke Malik had cracked about the governor's new beard. Then came the sound, a low, guttural hum that rattled your teeth, and before we could even look up, the first beam sliced through the ground like a knife through butter. Jessa went down first, her scream cut short as her suit split open, spilling red across the orange dirt. Malik shoved me behind a crate just as another beam took him, his body folding in half like a rag doll. I didn't see the rest die. I just heard the chaos, shouts, static over the comms, then silence. They came from nowhere, those bastards. Ships like jagged teeth hovering over us, black and gleaming, spitting fire that melted steel and bone alike. 12 of us gone in under a minute. 12 lives snuffed out like they didn't mean a damn thing. I survived because I crawled under a busted crate and held my breath until my lungs burned, watching through a crack as they scanned the wreckage, their drones buzzing like flies over a corpse. I don't know why they didn't finish the job. Maybe they thought we were too small to matter, just ants under their boots. That was their first mistake. Back at the main hab, the news hit like a shockwave. Governor Patel called it an unprovoked attack. Unprovoked? Hell, we didn't even know these things existed until they turned our friends to ash. The survivors, me included, stumbled into the mess hall, faces pale, hands shaking. Someone said they'd picked up a signal just before the strike, a garbled mess of clicks and screeches. Alien. That's what they were calling them. No name, no face, just a word that tasted like bile. The room erupted, people yelling, crying, demanding answers. Patel tried to calm us, his voice steady but his eyes wild. "We're reaching out to Earth," he said. "Fleet Command's been alerted. Help's coming." But I saw the truth in the way his hands gripped the podium. Earth was months away. Help wasn't coming fast enough. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Jess's face, the way it froze mid-scream, or Malik's body crumpling like paper. I kept replaying it, wondering why I'd lived when they hadn't. Guilt gnawed at me, but under it, something hotter was growing. Rage, pure and sharp, like a blade sharpening itself. I wasn't the only one. By morning, whispers were spreading through the colony. People weren't waiting for Earth. They wanted blood. Tanner, our chief mechanic, was already in the hangar, rigging drones with whatever explosives we had left. "They think they can hit us and walk away?" he growled, slamming a wrench against a workbench. "We've got ships, we've got weapons, we've got something they don't, us." He wasn't wrong. Titan wasn't some cushy core world settlement. We were roughnecks, miners, exiles, people who'd fought tooth and nail for every scrap we had. The aliens might have had tech that made our gear look like toys, but we had grit, and we had numbers. The colony had 36 scout ships, patched up relics from the expansion wars, and a couple of freighters we could arm if we stripped them down. Patel tried to shut it down, preaching caution, but the crowd drowned him out. "They killed our people," someone shouted. I think it was Lena, her voice raw from crying over her brother. "What's stopping them from coming back?" That's when I spoke up. I didn't plan to, but the words came anyway, loud and steady, cutting through the noise. "They won't stop. Not unless we make them." Heads turned, eyes locked on me. I wasn't a leader, just a grunt who dodged death by dumb luck. But right then I felt it, the weight of their anger matching mine. "We hit them back," I said. "Hard. We find them, and we make sure they never forget us." The room went quiet, then exploded again, this time with purpose. Tanner grinned, a feral edge to it, and clapped me on the shoulder. "You're damn right, kid. Let's give 'em hell." By noon, we were moving, techs welding warheads to ship hulls, pilots running sims, everyone pitching in. Patel gave up arguing and started helping, his hands dirty with grease by sundown. We didn't know where the aliens came from, not yet, but we had their signal, and we had a plan. Track it, hunt them, end them. They'd killed a dozen of us. A dozen lives we'd never get back. But we were thousands, and we were pissed. They'd lit the match. Now they'd burn. The next few days were a blur of sweat, steel, and sleepless nights. The hangar became our war room, a mess of sparking welders, clanging tools, and voices shouting over the hum of engines. We didn't have much, just a ragtag fleet of scout ships and freighters, patched together with spit and spite. But we made it work. Tanner took charge of the mods, barking orders like a drill sergeant, his hands black with oil as he rigged plasma cutters into makeshift cannons. I stuck close, hauling ammo crates and running diagnostics, anything to keep my mind off the ghosts trailing me. Every time I blinked, I saw Jess's blood soaking the dirt, Malik's body folding under that beam. It wasn't just grief anymore, it was fuel. We cracked the alien signal by the third day. Lena, our comms tech, had been hunched over her console non-stop, her eyes red-rimmed but fierce. She'd lost her brother in the attack, and you could hear it in her voice when she called us over. "Got it," she said, slamming a fist on the table. "It's faint, but it's a trail, coordinates bouncing off a relay in the Kuiper Belt. They're out there, hiding." The room went electric. People crowded around, staring at the flickering holomap as it traced a jagged line into the black. Patel rubbed his jaw, muttering something about needing confirmation, but Tanner cut him off. "Confirmation? They killed our people. That's all the proof we need." The plan came together fast. Too fast, maybe, but nobody cared. We'd take every ship we had, follow the signal, and hit them before they could hit us again. Risky didn't even begin to cover it. Our ships weren't built for war. They were prospectors, haulers, relics from a time when humanity thought the stars were ours for the taking. Against whatever those aliens had, sleek, deadly, precise, we were a junkyard armada. But that's what made it us. We didn't win pretty. We won ugly. Launch day hit like a punch. The hangar doors groaned open, revealing Titan's bruised sky, all rust and gray, and one by one, our ships roared to life. I was on the Stalwart, a beat-up freighter Tanner had turned into a battering ram, its hull bristling with jury-rigged guns. He'd named it after his kid sister, lost in some Earthside riot years back. Another ghost riding with us. I strapped into the co-pilot seat, my hands shaky on the controls, while Tanner took the helm, his grin sharp enough to cut glass. "Ready to make some noise, kid?" he asked. I nodded, throat tight. Noise was an understatement. The fleet lifted off in a ragged chorus of engines, 38 ships total, crewed by miners and techs who'd never fired a shot in their lives. Over the comms, voices crackled, nervous laughs, prayers, curses. Lena's ship, the Vindicator, led the way, her signal tracing gear locked on the alien trail. We punched through Titan's Atmo, the G-forces pinning me back, and then we were out, swallowed by the void. Stars glittered like cold eyes, watching us stumble into a fight we didn't fully understand. I kept waiting for doubt to creep in, but it didn't. All I felt was heat, a fire that had been smoldering since the attack, now roaring to life. Hours stretched into a tense, quiet crawl. The Kuiper Belt loomed ahead, a graveyard of ice and rock, perfect for an ambush. Lena's voice broke the silence, sharp and urgent. "Signal's spiking. They're close. Dead ahead. Maybe 2 clicks." My gut twisted. Tanner leaned forward, eyes narrowed, scanning the dark. "All ships, weapons hot," he growled into the comms. "If it moves, kill it." The fleet answered with a chorus of affirmatives, and I flipped the Stalwart's targeting systems online, my pulse hammering in my ears. Then we saw them. Not the ships, not yet, but a shimmer, like heat rising off pavement, warping the stars, cloaked or trying to be. A second later, the shimmer broke, and there they were. 3 alien vessels, sleek and predatory, their hulls glinting like obsidian. Bigger than ours, faster, deadlier. My breath caught, a flicker of fear clawing up my spine, but Tanner didn't flinch. "Lock on," he snapped, and I did, fingers trembling as I synced the guns. The comms erupted, Lena yelling coordinates, Patel ordering a spread formation, someone else just screaming. We fired first. The Stalwart's cannons spat plasma in ragged bursts, lighting up the dark, and the fleet followed, a chaotic storm of light and fury. The aliens reacted fast, their ships splitting apart like they'd rehearsed it, beams slicing back at us. One of our scouts, the Drifter, took a hit, exploding in a silent fireball, debris spinning into the void. I cursed, slamming a fist on the console, but Tanner just laughed, wild and unhinged. "That's it, you bastards. Come get us." They did. The lead alien ship swung toward us, its hull pulsing with some kind of energy, and a beam lashed out, grazing the Stalwart's flank. The whole ship shuddered, alarms blaring, and I smelled smoke. "Shields holding, barely," I shouted, rerouting power as Tanner banked hard, dodging another shot. Out the viewport, I saw the Vindicator land a hit, a plume of fire blooming on the alien side. Lena whooped over the comms, but it cut short as their second ship fired back, clipping her wing. It was chaos. Raw, messy, brutal. We were outgunned, outmatched, but we kept swinging. Every hit we took fueled the fire, every loss sharpening the edge. They'd killed a dozen of us back on Titan, thinking we'd break. They didn't know us at all. We weren't here to survive. We were here to make them pay. The battle turned into a grinder, a meat slicer of a fight that chewed us up and spat us out. The stalwart rocked under another near miss, the hull groaning like it was begging for mercy. But Tanner didn't let up. He wrestled the controls, banking us hard into a debris cloud from the drifter's wreck, using the spinning junk as cover. "Keep those guns hot!" he roared, his voice hoarse over the shrieking alarms. I obeyed, fingers slick with sweat as I hammered the targeting array, sending plasma bursts into the void. One caught the tail of the second alien ship, shearing off a chunk of its sleek frame. It spun, trailing sparks, and for a split second, I felt something like hope, until its beam swung back, carving a gash across our port side. The comms were a mess, a tangle of shouts and static. Lena's voice cut through, ragged but alive. "Vindicators hit. Stabilizers are toast, but we're still in it." Behind her, I heard someone sobbing, a sound that clawed at me. Patel's ship, the Endurance, was calling out targets, trying to herd our fleet into some kind of order, but it was like herding wolves, snarling, bloody, and half-mad. Another scout went down, the Prospector, its hull crumpling under a direct hit. I didn't know who was on it, but I felt the loss like a punch, another name to carve into the dirt when this was over. Out the viewport, the alien ships danced. Too fast, too precise, their movements mocking us. They didn't panic, didn't falter, even as we scored hits. It was like fighting machines, not beings, and that made it worse. Machines don't care about the dozen they'd killed on Titan, don't feel the weight of Jess's scream or Malik's last shove. But we did. Every shot we fired carried that weight, every dodge and weave a promise to make them regret it. Tanner saw it, too. I caught the glint in his eye, a mix of fury and something darker, like he was daring them to finish what they'd started. Then the third ship moved. The biggest one, silent until now. It didn't fire. It pulsed, a low thrum that rippled through the void and hit us like a fist. The stalwart's systems flickered, screens glitching, and my stomach lurched as the artificial grav cut out. Tools and debris floated, banging off the walls, and Tanner cursed, slamming a fist on the dash until the backup kicked in. "What the hell was that?" I yelled, wrestling the targeting back online. Lena's voice crackled through, strained. "EMP wave, half the fleet's dark. We're sitting ducks." She wasn't wrong. I glanced out and saw our ships drifting, engines stuttering, lights winking out. The aliens didn't waste time. Beams lanced through the chaos, picking us off like flies. The Hammer, a bulky freighter, split in half, its crew gone in a heartbeat. I couldn't breathe, the air too thick with smoke and fear, but Tanner just growled, "Not yet," and gunned the stalwart forward, straight at the big ship. "Tanner, what?" I started, but he cut me off. "They want to play? We ram the bastards." It was insane, suicidal. But I didn't argue. Maybe because I didn't care anymore, or maybe because I trusted him to pull it off. We barreled through the debris, dodging beams by inches, the hull rattling so hard I thought it'd shake apart. The alien ship loomed, its surface rippling like liquid metal, and I braced, hands clenched on the console. At the last second, Tanner yanked the controls, veering us into a skid that grazed their flank. Our cannons fired point blank, a desperate salvo that tore into their hull, splitting it open in a gout of fire and gas. The shockwave shoved us back, spinning us wild, and I laughed, half crazed, half triumphant, as their ship listed, wounded but not dead. The comms roared back to life, Lena shouting, Nice shot, you lunatics! The fleet rallied, those still kicking anyway, and we hit them again, a ragged wave of defiance. The second alien ship faltered, its engines flaring out, and Patel's endurance finished it with a missile volley, a bloom of light that lit up the dark. 2 down. But the first ship, the fast one, slipped away, cloaking again, and that third one, the big bastard, was stabilizing, its hull knitting itself back together like some nightmare. Tanner slumped back, breathing hard, his grin gone. "They're not done," he muttered, wiping blood from a cut on his brow. I nodded, staring at the flickering holomap. The signal was still there, pulsing stronger now, deeper in the belt. "Neither are we," I said, and meant it. We'd lost ships, lost people, too many, but we'd drawn blood. They weren't invincible, and that was enough to keep us going. The fleet regrouped, what was left of it. 22 ships, battered and leaking, but still snarling. Patel came over the comms, his voice steady again. "We've got their attention. Push forward. Follow that signal." No one argued. We'd started this fight on their terms, but we'd ended on ours. They'd underestimated us once. They wouldn't get the chance again. The Kuiper Belt swallowed us whole, a jagged maze of ice and shadow that turned our pursuit into a slow, nerve-shredding hunt. The fleet limped along, 22 ships weaving through the floating graveyard, engines growling against the strain. The stalwart's hull creaked with every turn, patched up with emergency seals that wouldn't hold forever. Tanner kept us steady, his hands white-knuckled on the controls, but I could see the wear in his eyes, cracks in the bravado he'd worn like armor. I felt it too, a heaviness settling in my chest, not just from the fight, but from the quiet that followed. The aliens had gone silent, their surviving ships vanishing into the belt's depths, leaving us chasing ghosts. Lena's signal was our lifeline, a thin thread pulsing through the static. She'd patched the Vindicator's systems enough to keep tracking, her voice a constant over the comms, sharp and frayed. "It's moving. Faster now, heading coreward. They're running." Running. The word stuck in my throat. After what they'd done, Jessa, Malik, the Drifter, the Hammer, they didn't get to run. But it wasn't fear driving them, I realized, watching the holomap flicker. It was strategy. They were luring us, pulling us deeper into their turf, and we were too damn angry to care. Patel tried to rein us in, his voice crackling through the fleet. "We need to regroup, reassess. Our losses are too high to keep pushing blind." A few agreed, their ships faltering, but Tanner snorted, cutting the comms mid-sentence. "Regroup? While they lick their wounds and come back stronger? No chance." He glanced at me, daring me to argue. I didn't. I couldn't. Every second we waited was a second they got further. A second Jessa's death slipped into something distant, meaningless. "We end this," I said, my voice low but firm. He nodded, and that was that. The belt tightened around us, chunks of ice the size of mountains drifting too close, scraping our shields. The stalwart took a hit from a rogue fragment, a dull thud that rattled my teeth, and I patched the breach with a foam gun, cursing under my breath. The fleet was fraying. 2 more ships peeled off, their captains muttering about fuel and damage, but the rest pressed on, a stubborn, battered pack. Lena called out a new reading, her tone spiking. "Signals splitting. Multiple sources now converging ahead. It's not just ships. It's something bigger." Bigger. The word hung there, heavy and cold. I leaned over the console, squinting at the map as it resolved. A cluster of signatures, too dense for a fleet, too structured for debris. A station, maybe, or a hive. My gut twisted, a mix of dread and adrenaline, but Tanner just laughed. A dry, bitter sound. "Good. More of 'em to kill." He cranked the throttle, and the stalwart surged forward, the fleet trailing us like a wake. We saw it before we understood it, a shape cutting through the dark, massive and jagged, like a city carved from black glass. It dwarfed us, its surface studded with spires and glowing seams, a fortress floating in the void. The surviving alien ships, the fast one and the big bastard, flanked it, their hulls pulsing in sync with the structure. Drones swarmed out, dozens of them, buzzing like hornets, and the comms lit up with panic. "What the hell is that?" someone yelled. Lena's voice broke through, steady but tight. "It's their base. Has to be. Readings are off the charts. Power levels, EM spikes. They're dug in. Dug in didn't cover it." The first drone wave hit us hard, kamikaze runs that slammed into our shields, bursting in flares of light and shrapnel. The Raven, a scout ship, didn't dodge fast enough. Its hull cracked open, spilling air and bodies into the black. I flinched, hands frozen on the controls, but Tanner was already moving, weaving us through the swarm, cannons blazing. "Focus, kid," he snapped, and I did, locking onto a drone cluster and firing until they scattered into dust. The fleet fought back, ragged but fierce, missiles and plasma carving paths through the drones. Patel's Endurance took point, soaking up hits to shield the smaller ships, its hull glowing red from the strain. We pushed closer, the base looming larger, its spires bristling with turrets that hadn't fired yet. That scared me more than the drones. Whatever was waiting, it was holding back, watching us bleed. Lena's ship landed a salvo on the fast alien vessel, crippling its engines, and it drifted, helpless, until the Vindicator finished it with a gut shot. One left, plus the fortress. Tanner grinned, wild and unhinged, as we closed the gap. "They're cornered now. Nowhere to run." But I wasn't so sure. The big ship, the one we'd rammed, hovered near the base, its hull still scarred but active, and the fortress itself pulsed, a slow, deliberate rhythm that felt alive. We'd found them, all right. Their heart, their home. But as the turrets swiveled toward us, lighting up the dark with their first volley, I wondered if we'd bitten off more than we could chew. The fortress opened fire, and the void turned into a slaughterhouse. Beams thicker than our ships carved through the dark, relentless and precise, tearing into the fleet like a butcher's blade. The Crescent, a patched-up hauler, didn't stand a chance. Its shields buckled, and it burst apart in a silent fireball, debris raining against our hull. I gripped the stalwart's console, my knuckles white, as Tanner yanked us into a dive, dodging a beam that grazed our tail. The ship screamed, metal twisting, and a klaxon blared. "Pressure leak, starboard side." "Patch it!" Tanner barked, his voice raw, and I stumbled to the wall, slamming a seal over the crack, my hands shaking so bad I nearly dropped the gun. The comms were a nightmare. Screams, garbled orders, static swallowing half the fleet's voices. Patel's Endurance was still out there, a stubborn bull taking hits and firing back, its cannons pounding the fortress's spires. One snapped off, tumbling into the void, and a cheer went up, ragged but real. Lena's Vindicator darted through the chaos, her crew targeting the drones, thinning their swarm with every pass. But it wasn't enough. The big alien ship, the one we'd scarred, joined the fray, its beams sinking with the fortress. And another scout, the Sparrow, vanished in a blink, leaving nothing but dust. We were dying out here piece by piece, and I felt it, the weight of every loss piling on, threatening to crush me. Jess's face flashed again, Malik's too, and now the Crescent's crew, faceless but ours. I wanted to scream, to hit something, but Tanner's voice cut through the haze. "Eyes up, kid. We're not done." He swung the stalwart toward the fortress, cannons blazing, and I locked onto a turret, firing until it exploded in a shower of sparks. It wasn't much, but it was something. A crack in their armor, a dent in their smug, silent arrogance. Lena's voice broke over the comms, breathless. "I'm reading a power surge! Core of the base! If we hit it, we might cripple them." Patel latched onto it, his tone steady despite the chaos. "All ships, focus fire on the center. Give it everything." The fleet shifted, a wounded beast baring its teeth, and we unloaded. Missiles, plasma, anything we had left. The stalwart's guns overheated, barrels glowing red, and I rerouted power from the shields, praying we wouldn't need them. Explosions bloomed across the fortress, fire licking its black glass, but it didn't break. It shuddered, pulsed harder, and then silence. The turret stopped. The big ship froze, drifting like it had lost its mind. For a heartbeat, I thought we'd done it, cracked their spine. Then the pulse hit. A wave of force that slammed us back, flipping the stalwart end over end. My head cracked against the console, blood hot on my tongue, and Tanner cursed, wrestling the controls as we spun. The fleet scattered, ships tumbling, and the comms went dead, swallowed by a hiss of white noise. When we stabilized, the fortress was still there, glowing brighter, angrier, and the big ship was moving again. Slower, but alive. "They're rebooting," Lena said, her voice faint over a backup channel. "That surge. It's a reset. We've got a window, but it's closing fast." A window. I wiped blood from my brow, staring at the fortress, its spires glinting like fangs. Tanner didn't hesitate. "Ram it," he said, and I snapped my head toward him. "What?" He glared at me, eyes burning. "We ram the core. Blow it from the inside. End this." My stomach dropped, but I saw it. The logic, the madness, the only play we had left. The fleet was down to 16 ships, half crippled, and the aliens were waking up. We couldn't outgun them, but we could hit them where it hurt. Patel's voice cut in, sharp. "Tanner, stand down. That's suicide." But Tanner killed the comms, his jaw set. "Not if we're fast. Get the charges ready." I stared at him, then nodded, scrambling to the cargo bay. We had mining explosives, crude, heavy, meant for cracking rock, not alien fortresses. I rigged them to a timer, my hand steady now, fueled by something colder than fear. Back in the cockpit, Tanner was already plotting the run, the stalwart's engines whining as he pushed them past Redline. The fleet saw us move and reacted. Some followed, others hesitated, but Patel's endurance stayed back, covering us with a barrage that lit up the dark. The fortress loomed, its turrets flickering back to life, and a beam clipped our wing, shearing off a chunk of hull. We didn't stop. Tanner aimed us like an arrow, straight at the glowing core, and I braced, the timer ticking in my lap. "For Jessa," I whispered, and Tanner grunted. "For all of them." We hit. The stalwart slammed into the fortress, metal crumpling, and the world turned white. The white faded slow, like waking from a bad dream, but the pain told me I wasn't dreaming. My head throbbed, a dull hammer pounding behind my eyes, and something wet, blood, probably, trickled down my neck. The stalwart was a wreck, its cockpit a twisted cage of sparking wires and shattered glass. I coughed, tasting smoke, and fumbled with my harness, fingers numb as I pried it loose. Tanner was slumped beside me, breathing shallow, a gash across his forehead painting half his face red. "Tanner!" I shook him, my voice hoarse, and he groaned, eyes fluttering open. "Still here, kid," he rasped, forcing a grin that looked more like a grimace. "Did we get him?" I didn't know. The viewport was cracked, showing nothing but dark and static, but the silence was deafening. No alarms, no comms, just the creak of the hull settling. I stumbled to my feet, head spinning, and checked the timer on the charges. It was dead, crushed in the crash, but I'd set it short. 10 seconds. If it had gone off, we'd done something. If it hadn't, we were screwed. "Come on," I said, hauling Tanner up. He winced, clutching his side, but didn't argue as we limped to the airlock. The stalwart was done, hull breached, engines cold, but we weren't. The airlock hissed open, and we stepped into hell. The fortress's core was a cavern of black glass and pulsing light, its walls torn open where we'd punched through. Shards floated in zero-G, glinting like knives, and a faint hum vibrated through the floor, rattling my teeth. The charges had detonated. Half the chamber was a smoking ruin, cables sparking, machinery melted into slag. We'd hit them, all right, but not hard enough. The glow still pulsed, weaker but alive. And in the distance, I saw shapes moving. Drones, or something worse, skittering toward us through the wreckage. Tanner leaned on me, his breath ragged. "Fleet's gotta finish it," he muttered, scanning the dark. I nodded, fumbling with my suit's comms, praying the backup channel worked. Static crackled, then Lena's voice broke through, faint and frantic. "Stalwart, you copy? Anyone alive in there?" Relief hit me like a wave. "Lena, it's us. We're inside. Core's damaged, but not down. You've got to hit it again." A pause, then she swore. "You're insane. Fleet's a mess. 12 ships left, barely holding. Patel's gone quiet." 12. The number sank in, heavy and cold. We'd started with 38, and now we were down to a handful, bleeding out in the void. I pictured Patel's endurance, that stubborn tank silent now, and my chest tightened. But Lena was still talking, her voice steel. "We saw the blast, thought you were toast. If you're in there, guide us. Where's the weak spot?" I looked around, squinting through the haze. The pulse came from a massive column, cracked but intact, its base littered with fried circuits. "Center column," I said. "It's the heart. Hit it hard." Tanner coughed, blood flecking his lips, and pointed to a console flickering nearby. "That's their tech. Bet it's linked." I dragged him over, propping him against it, and we pried it open. Alien glyphs glowed, shifting like liquid, but I didn't need to read them. I smashed the panel with a shard of metal, sparks flying, and the hum faltered, just for a second. "Lena, now!" I yelled into the comms. Outside, the fortress shuddered as the fleet unloaded, a distant rumble I felt through the floor. Light flared through the breaches, plasma and missiles hammering the core. The shapes in the dark got closer, tall, thin, moving like spiders on too many legs. Not drones. Aliens. My skin crawled, but I grabbed Tanner's arm, pulling him toward a gap in the wall. "Move!" He stumbled, weaker now, and I half-carried him, my own legs burning. A beam lanced past us, searing the air, and I ducked, shoving us behind a slab of debris. The aliens didn't shout, didn't taunt, just advanced, silent and relentless, their limbs clicking against the glass. I fired my sidearm, a miner's pistol, and one dropped, its body folding in a spray of ichor. Tanner laughed, a wet, broken sound. "Good shot." The fleet's barrage intensified, shaking the chamber, and the column groaned, cracks spidering up its length. The aliens froze, heads swiveling, then scattered, retreating deeper into the fortress. "They're running," I said, hope flickering. Tanner gripped my arm, his eyes fierce despite the blood. "Finish it, kid. For me." I nodded, throat tight, and dragged him toward the breach, aiming for an escape pod we'd spotted. Alien, small, but ours now. The core buckled as we reached it, a final salvo from the Vindicator splitting it open. The hum died, replaced by a shriek of rending metal, and the fortress began to collapse, walls caving in slow motion. I shoved Tanner into the pod, slamming the hatch as the floor gave way. The pod launched, tumbling into the void, and through its tiny port I saw the fortress implode. Spires folding, light snuffing out, the big ship caught in the blast, shredded to nothing. We'd done it. But Tanner wasn't moving. The pod spun wild through the void, a tin can tossed in a storm, and I clung to the straps, my breath fogging the cracked visor of my suit. Tanner was slumped across from me, his chest barely moving, blood pooling under him in 0G, floating like dark jewels. I reached for him, my hands clumsy in the gloves, and pressed them to his side, trying to staunch the flow. "Stay with me, damn it," I muttered, my voice breaking. His eyes flickered, unfocused, but he managed a weak grunt. "Tougher than I look, kid." It was a lie, and we both knew it, but I clung to it anyway, like it could keep him here. Through the pod's port, the fortress was a dying star, collapsing in on itself, a slow, silent explosion of glass and fire that swallowed the last alien ship. The fleet, what was left of it, hovered at the edges, battered silhouettes against the glow. 12 ships, Lena had said. 12 out of 38. The math gnawed at me, a tally of names I couldn't unsee. Jessa, Malik, the Crescent's crew, Patel's silence, and now Tanner, slipping away in this stolen hunk of alien junk. I wanted to feel triumph, to savor the sight of their base crumbling, but all I tasted was ash. The pod's comms crackled, faint at first. Then Lena's voice punched through, sharp with relief. "Stalwart crew, you alive? We've got your beacon. Hang on!" I fumbled with the controls, my fingers slick with Tanner's blood, and rasped back. "It's me." "Tanner's hurt bad. Get us out of here." A pause, then she swore, soft and fierce. "Vindicator's en route. Hold tight." I glanced at Tanner, his face gray under the grime, and whispered, "You hear that?" "They're coming." He didn't answer, just wheezed, a sound that cut deeper than any beam. The wait stretched, seconds bleeding into minutes, and I kept talking. To him, to myself, to the ghosts crowding the pod. "We got 'em, Tanner. Blew their heart out. For Jessa, for Malik, for everyone." My voice cracked, tears burning my eyes, but I didn't stop. "You were right. They didn't know us. Didn't know what we'd do." His hand twitched, fingers brushing mine, and I gripped it hard, like I could anchor him here. The pod jolted as the Vindicator's grapple locked on, towing us in, and I braced, praying we weren't too late. The airlock hissed open, and Lena was there, her suit scorched, her face pale but set. Medics swarmed in behind her, pulling Tanner onto a stretcher, their hands moving fast, too fast, like they knew something I didn't. I stumbled after them, legs numb, and Lena grabbed my arm, steadying me. "You did it," she said, her voice low. "Core's gone, fleet's down, drones are dead. We won." Won. The word felt hollow, echoing in my skull as I watched the medics work, their shouts fading to a dull roar. Tanner's eyes met mine, one last time, and he smirked, faint but real. Then they closed. He was gone by the time we hit the Vindicator's bay. The medics didn't say it. They didn't have to. I stood there, staring at the sheet they'd pulled over him, my hands still red with his blood. Lena put a hand on my shoulder, silent, and I shrugged it off, not ready for comfort. Not yet. Around us, the crew moved slow, faces hollowed out by exhaustion and loss. 12 ships, maybe 100 of us left, out of thousands. We'd wiped the aliens out, ripped their base apart, turned their ambush into a graveyard. But the cost was a knife twisting in my gut. I wandered to the bay's viewport, looking out at the wreckage. The fortress was dust now, drifting in the belt, a tomb for whatever those things had been. No signals, no pulses, just silence. The fleet limped around it, patching hulls, counting the dead. Lena joined me, her arms crossed, staring at the same nothing. "Patel's ship didn't make it," she said finally. "Took a hit covering your run, him and 20 others." I nodded, throat tight. Another name, another debt. "We're not done," I said, the words slipping out before I knew why. Lena frowned, glancing at me. "What's left?" "They're gone." I shook my head, staring at the dark beyond the debris. That was one base, one fleet. They came from somewhere, killed a dozen of us like it was nothing. There's more. She didn't argue, just watched me, her jaw tightening. The fire in me wasn't out. It had dimmed, banked under the weight of it all, but it still burned. For Tanner, for Patel, for the dozen they'd taken first. The Vindicator's engines hummed, turning us back toward Titan, and I stayed there, rooted, the void staring back. The trip back to Titan was a quiet bleed, the Vindicator cutting through the void like a mourner heading to a funeral. The bay was a makeshift morgue, bodies under sheets, too many to count, and the living moved among them, hollow-eyed, patching wounds and ships with the same numb hands. I stayed by the viewport, watching the Kuiper Belt fade into a smudge of ice and shadow, the fortress's grave lost in the black. Lena didn't push me to talk, just lingered nearby, her presence a steady anchor I didn't deserve but needed. The fire in me hadn't died. It coiled tight, waiting, but the weight of what we'd lost pressed down hard, threatening to smother it. We buried Tanner on Titan, or what passed for burial out here. No dirt to dig, just a sealed capsule launched into orbit, his name scratched into the metal with a welder's torch. A dozen of us stood in the hangar, suits on, heads bowed as the pod arced into the sky, a faint streak against the rust-gray clouds. Lena said a few words, short, rough, about his grit, his laugh, but I couldn't speak. My throat locked up, memories of his wild grin and bloody hands choking me silent. He'd gotten us here, pushed us to ram the bastards, and now he was gone. Another ghost riding my shoulder with Jessa and Malik. The colony was a shell when we landed. The attack had gutted it. Craters where the beams hit. Habs cracked open, the air thick with dust and grief. The survivors met us, faces gaunt, asking questions we couldn't answer. "Did you get them?" a woman demanded, her voice sharp with tears. I nodded, forcing the words out. "They're gone. Base is dust." She stared, then turned away, like it didn't matter anymore. Maybe it didn't. We'd wiped them off the map, but the dozen they'd killed stayed dead, and the scars they'd left wouldn't heal with vengeance. Lena took charge, rallying what was left. Techs to fix the ships, medics to tend the wounded, me to help her sift through the wreckage of the alien pod we'd escaped in. It was a twisted mess, but its systems hummed, faint and alien, a puzzle we couldn't crack yet. "This is our edge," she said, prying open a panel, her hands steady where mine shook. "They're out there. More of them. We need to know what we're up against." I didn't argue. The signal we'd chased, the fortress, the way they'd fought, it wasn't random. It was a piece of something bigger, a war we'd stumbled into blind. Days blurred into nights, Titan's dim sun barely marking the hours. I worked with Lena, pulling data from the pod, mapping the signal's origin deeper into the black, past the belt, past anything we'd charted. The fleet, what was left, repaired slow, 10 ships now, armed with scavenged alien tech we barely understood. The colony whispered about Earth, about calling for help, but the comms lag was months, and we'd stopped waiting. We'd fought alone, bled alone, and we'd finish it alone if we had to. One night, I stood at the crater where Jessa and Malik died. The dirt still stained dark. The wind howled, kicking up dust, and I clenched my fists, feeling the fire flare again. They'd killed a dozen of us, 12 lives snuffed out like sparks, and we'd answered with a roar that shook the stars. The fortress was gone, their ships shattered, their drones silent. But it wasn't enough. Not while their kind still breathed somewhere out there, plotting, waiting. I'd seen their faces in the core, those spider-limbed things cold and merciless, And I knew they wouldn't stop. Neither would we. Lena found me there, her suit patched, her eyes hard. "Data's decoded," she said. "Coordinates. Another system, 3 jumps out. Could be their home." I turned, meeting her gaze, and saw the same fire mirrored back. "We go," I said, no hesitation. She nodded, a grim smile tugging her lips. "Fleet's ready. We hit them before they hit us again." The Vindicator launched at dawn, 10 ships rising from Titan's dust, a battered spear aimed at the dark. I stood at the helm, Lena beside me, the pod's map glowing on the console, a path to their heart. They'd underestimated us once, thought a dozen dead would break us. They were wrong. We'd wiped their outpost off the map, and now we'd take the rest. For Jessa, for Malik, for Tanner, for every soul they'd dared to touch. Humans don't bend. We burn,